tend to be, the near-death people, they have their group, and the dowsers, they have their group. And the people that study the psi phenomena, paranormal mind-matter connections, they have their group. The people who study reincarnation, they have their group. But each kind of holds its territory rather sacred, and there's a great need to look at what do all these anomalies have in common. For one thing, they all operate in some way outside the ordinary space-time continuum. But there are many other matters that need to be looked at that I think would, if all these groups could get together and didn't hold on to, well, I can go here but not there, that kind of thing, it would be very effective. Appreciate more the esoteric and sacred nature of these phenomena. Now, I'm trying to explain what I mean by that. I began to get the idea a year or two ago that going in front of groups of people who really weren't able to hear these experiences, was not the right thing to do. That there was something, that there's something about this that didn't fit. And when I asked Native people about, who came forward to say, oh, we know about this, I got a lot of support starting in the mid-1990s from Native medicine men who came forward to support me, said, we know about this. This is, I'd say, well, why haven't you come forward to, before this? Well, they said a lot of reasons for that. One is the anthropologists didn't know enough to ask the right questions. But more fundamentally, the matter is sacred. We're talking about divine matters here. We're not talking about something that can be reduced to, let's study it only scientifically. Again, that's not against Western science, but there is a different way of respecting this phenomenon, these phenomena, that has made me feel that it has a kind of special sort of, it's touched by higher forces, and that to not recognize that and to just present it, let's get it across to people because it's real, is a violation in some way of what we're dealing with. Again, I've already referred to this, develop better collaboration among ourselves and more effective means of public education, especially the use of the media and public relations. Again, to resist this tendency we have to call each other names, to be divided among ourselves, to any time we can't go there, it somehow becomes a hoax. I'm not saying there are no hoaxes, but have you noticed the tendency that where something, you've just gotten to see something as really powerful and effective, and it strikes you as important and meaningful, and you're there, and then you read someplace in some UFO journal it's really a hoax. And how can we possibly evaluate every time somebody says a hoax? I have a suspicion that a lot of things that get called hoaxes is just that it's too good to be true, that people can't go there yet, which isn't to say that there are no hoaxes. I just think we need to be more sensitive to the way we get divided among ourselves and argue among ourselves. All right. Now I want to move on to this matter of the case of the reptilians. And you'll think this is a rapid change of direction, and it sort of is at the moment, but not as much as I hope it won't seem too far from what I've been talking about. Well, you're familiar with the reptilian beings that experiencers encounter. They tend to, I don't know, this Will Boucher threw that one in. I don't vouch for this guy that's there. I mean, but they're described as tall, powerful, muscular, lizard-like, often with scales and a brow here and sort of a carapace on the chest, and they're sometimes they're said to not smell good, and writer David Chase referred to them as an ancient warrior race, proud, willful, domineering, territorial, physically aggressive, deceptive, emotionally manipulative, sexually intrusive, and potentially cruel. Their craft are Spartan, functional environments. In spite of their bad side, they also show a strong sense of duty and technical ability, and one reptilian was described as compassionate. Well, you know, it's so I'm just going to quickly tell you a few of the cases that I've had of people that have had reptilian encounters. Start with Greg. Now, Greg is a physician in his 50s, and he has had a lifelong battle with his reptilian beings. They seem to struggle with him for his soul, and it's hard to know exactly how this began with him, but this is what I wrote about him at the time that I was working with him. He felt that certain reptilian beings were out to destroy him, seemingly out of a motive of revenge. They would do this by invading his soul and sucking the life energy out of me, out of my soul. It was unbelievably terrifying. He resisted these beings intensely, for he felt certain that his life had a purpose and that he must deal with this darkness and not suffer at the expense of it. But through this struggle, he discovered that the light is much stronger, and the battle was actually empowering and even enlightening. He felt a compassion for their pain and didn't want to lose a total connection with them. I think I want in some way to participate in their getting in touch with their souls. He said of them, I don't love what they do to me, I do care for them. And Karen, who I wrote about in Passport, came upon in one of our sessions, we had many, many sessions, but she, for the first time, encountered what she described as encounters with ugly, scaly, lizard-like beings that seemed in some ways to represent her struggle with some reptilian energies of her own. But then I spoke with a native woman, a Peruvian shaman, about her encounters, and she said, in contrast to our kind of Judeo-Christian relationship to the reptilian beings, she said that the serpent energy was was an energy that she could enter into fully because she felt one with it. One of my people I've worked with who studies shamanism described an encounter with an anaconda like snake, and it twirled and it twirled and it twirled, and then it became like she was inside of a spaceship. So it was like her encounters with the reptilians was much more of a kind of spiritual connection. I was struck by Dan McAvoy's comment that the blood samples they took from this being that Jonathan Reed, I don't know whether you believe it or not, but he did say that the blood samples had a kind of human and reptilian nature to the genome that was discovered there. There is a huge range of attitudes that people have toward the reptilian beings. On the whole, they don't have a good reputation. Here's Donna, who I've worked with for several years, who tends to have a somewhat victim-like relationship to all of her experiences in her world, but she described this great distress, an encounter with these beings, reptilian beings in a cave, lizard-like beings with the green, with the scaly ones with a very thick, a big snout and a thick, hard chest, and she described at one point like a little dinosaur, like a little T-Rex, very vicious. One of them tried to rape her, she said, and she described it as like, those Japanese dragon-type lizards, she said. And she said that in addition to trying to rape, she saw them eating babies. It was horrible, I mean, her description. But then I've also worked with people who feel that they are in some way identified with this race of beings. that they represent an ancient race that they are somehow part of or connected with or were once connected with. Paul described his own identification with an ancient race of reptilian beings who were compassionate and understanding, who were able, and he was able, they were akin to those on the earth and had some relationship with them. Now I'll tell you a little bit more about Dana. Dana is a entertainer, now in her early 50s, who has had a very powerful sexual contact with an alien being, or a reptilian being, which was in no way, she was scared at first, but it was an ecstatic experience. It was a powerful connection for her, and it represented for her, she discovered in a sense in this her own warrior energy. She said it was almost as if he were a part of myself who I was meeting in that exchange, that sexual exchange, as if my own energy were incarnated in that fierce warrior and I was really making love with a different reptilian aspect of myself. I feel as if my energy is distinctly reptilian, bold, and warrior-like. Now, she actually has written a manuscript which isn't published, which is one of the reasons I don't want to identify her. Some of you might be able to, but she's talked about a reptilian hierarchy. She's very familiar with this whole area. There's a huge dragon-like figure she calls Draco, which is the Greek word for dragon, that is 15 feet tall, has wings, takes her up, and it's really far out, right? I mean, this is beyond where even I could go, but she's a person of very solid, sound mind. She's also had encounters with other more delicate snake-like beings, and she's played a role as a diplomat, as kind of leader of a sort of snake tribe that makes peace among the reptilians. She described a friend of hers who had a reptilian relationship, a guy she calls Mick, and he apparently confronted one of these alien beings. He said, "Man, you're ugly." And the alien said, "You should see what you look like to us." Now, she has had herself a very powerful connection with an alien race that became extinct. Now, Barbara Lamb, where are you, Barbara? Barbara is here. Barbara has done regression with this person, and I want her to tell you about, because her relationship with this race came out in this regression. So, Barbara, would you come up and join me here?
This was just a few years ago, and I had the great privilege and pleasure and fascination of regressing Dana to this experience. And I had known that she had had experiences with them in this life, including some of the sexual experiences. So we just didn't know what we were going to go into when we did the regression. But basically the question that we asked, or the issue that we focused on in doing the regression, was what is her connection originally, or that is, what is the source of her connection with these reptilian beings? And in the regression, she went to a whole scene which she sensed was a long, long time ago. She thought it seemed like it might be another planet just because of the coloration of the ground and the sky and so forth. And in this regression, she was a reptilian being. She was a male, and she was strong. As John described it, she was strong and husky and powerful and proud and straight. And she was the leader of a reptilian group of males. And in this particular happening, she was standing on top of a tall bluff with a whole troop of these reptilian beings around her. And they were looking forward in a certain direction, off into the distance. And they could see that there was a huge wave of heat and colored light, red, yellow light coming toward them. They knew it was disaster. She didn't know if it was a nuclear blast or just what it was, but they knew that they were facing the end. And the magnificent thing about this was that instead of their buying into fear, as most of us would do and running around, they stood firm. They linked arms. They linked consciousness with their minds. They had total telepathic communication. And she led them in having agreement that they would stand firm and receive the energy of this terrific wave of destruction that was coming to them, instead of running from it or trying to avoid it. So they were getting ready to just receive it with all the cells in their bodies and their mind and all of their consciousness, knowing that as their physical bodies would be destroyed, that their consciousness, their spirits, yes, reptilians can even have spirits, that their spirits would be surviving and would be transformed into a different dimension. And for her, she was so proud of these beings, proud of herself, with all the strength that they had and the communication they had.
Would you just very briefly, you want to say about your own?
Yeah. Okay. And then there's another thing I'd like to share too, and that is an experience that happened to me personally in this lifetime just a very few years ago. I had already been doing a few years of regression work with experiences of extraterrestrial contact, including experience with some reptilian contacts. And one day, having done some appointments or whatever, I was just walking through the living room in my house, and suddenly, pop, right in front of me, to my enormous surprise, was a reptilian being. He was a little bit taller than I. Now, normally in this life, if I'd seen a reptile of any kind, even a little one, you know, in my living room, I would have been really freaked out. I'm not very comfortable with reptilian beings. But anyway, with this experience, conscious, awake experience, I saw this reptilian being standing in my living room. I went right over to him, extended my hand, held his hand, looked into these beautiful, I thought they were beautiful, golden colored eyes with a little vertical eyeball, little pupil, kind of a lightning strike. And that's all that I remember consciously. But a few weeks later, I had a past life therapy colleague of mine do a regression on me to see if there was anything more to that experience. And to make a long story short, in the few minutes that that reptilian being was there, he said to me telepathically as we continued to hold hands, and I can still remember the feeling, the physical feeling of that hand, thick and strong and not creepy. I was surprised it wasn't creepy. And he reassured me that he is an ambassador from somewhere else, an ambassador representing many, many different extraterrestrial beings who come and interact with human beings. And he was here to tell me, as somebody who regresses people to these experiences, and sometimes because of my growing up in my conditioned mind, I wonder, could this really, really, really be true? It certainly seems as if it is. But he wanted to reassure me, for the sake of all those different species who come here, that yes, indeed, they do really exist. They do come here. They come here very quickly into our awareness, and they pop out. They disappear from our awareness very quickly, and that it is a very meaningful phenomenon, and that we have no idea how important we are, that's you and me, all of us are to them. So for me, that was a very positive experience. And then just suddenly, he was gone, and I went on with my rest of my day.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, if she ran into an unkind, I don't need this. She ran, do I? No. If she ran into an unkind talk show host, you know what they, okay, you know, but we're among friends here. Now, how, next one, yeah. What are the ways we might think about these encounters? This gets into the example of illustration of what I've been talking about earlier on in the lecture. There's the literal, and I'll take each of these individually, the literal, individual psychological way of looking at it, biology, the phylogeny, that is going back where we came from originally, collective unconscious, the symbolic, metaphysical, myths and religion, or some combination of the above. Now, the literal approach is, you know, they're alien reptilian beings. They're here. They're coming. They're doing whatever they do with us. They mate with us, or they relate warmly with us, or they do cruel things. But they're real. They're here. And the literal approach would have to, and there's a lot of truth there. The literal approach would also include the conspiratorial, paranoid approach to the reptilians, which you've probably heard about, that they're here to they're taking us over, and I don't want to attribute that, but you know who the people are that are really into the reptilian takeover way of going about this. Individual psychodynamic. Well, that has to do with the fact that this represents the repressed desires for some kind of powerful instinctual sexual relationship on the part of the individuals. I won't even do anything with that. The biology, we do have a brain. The brain stem is thought of as reptilian. The lower instinctual parts of our brains are very similar to the reptilian brains. We are what our relationship is to the dinosaurs and the early reptilian beings. The crocodiles and other reptilians are still here. In terms of the evolution of species, what is the biology, phylogeny of that? The collective unconscious, this would have to do with ideas that are in our deeper souls, unconscious, that are common to people all over the world, which would include certain kinds of images, including the reptilians representing all the different things I've already mentioned, powerful instinctual connections with primitive aspects of ourselves and so forth. Now, I mentioned transpersonal psychology because I found my own training in this area very valuable in doing this work. What this means, essentially, is that our being, ourselves, is not limited to this physical body. In fact, our consciousness can travel. It can go through time and space. It can go back into the time of the dinosaurs when they became extinct. It can go into other dimensions of reality. In other words, that it can go into past lives. It can go into identification with almost any element in the universe. And this is associated with the work of Stanislav Grof, and is something that well, it doesn't make sense to recommend anything to anybody at this point, but I think it is important to at least know the fundamental notions about transpersonal psychology, because I think it is a major departure from traditional psychology, and for me it's helped me immensely in trying to in some way get myself around this whole reptilian phenomenon. Metaphysical, symbolic, I won't dwell on that. It has to do with the symbolisms and forms that seem to have reptilian or snake-like forms. Emperor Constantine, when he converted to Christianity, they showed him with his symbol was a sword killing a serpent. There are archetypal snake and spiral forms throughout nature. In medicine, the caduceus are snakes surrounding the staff of Hermes. Similarly, there are symbols of transformation in alchemy, which have to do with reptilian energies, with the Ouroboros, which is a snake biting its own tail, which represents transformation. Now, the mythico-religious area, again, this relates to the collective unconscious. Dragons, serpents have I'll take these quickly one by one. Dragons and serpents show up in almost all the mythologies of the planet. In the pre-Greek Mycenaean and Minoan mythology, they are creator, nurturant figures, but little by little in Greek and later Christian and Islamic mythology, the dragons, they may be guardians, but they also become, they lose their protector function and they become seen as more dangerous, destructive figures. Although there's always a kind of ambivalence about dragons. They're sort of wonderful and beautiful and creative, but they're also dangerous and threatening. And again, what they represent in terms of our own deeper selves is an important question. We're flooded these days, especially these days, which is an interesting question, of fascination with dinosaurs, crocodiles, reptiles of all sorts, monsters, Godzilla, the Komodo dragons. There's lots of TV specials. I never heard of them until recently. Other reptiles. Some cultures think that dinosaur bones, when they discover them, are actually really dragon bones. There are creation myths involving cosmic battles between reptilians. There are reptilian ancient astronauts in many creative myths. René Boulay, who's Ted Strain and Paul Price have written a book, came out in 1990, called Serpents and Dragons, The Story of Mankind's Reptilian Past. Until I got into this work, I never would have taken this seriously. But they talk about, in the cultures, Egypt, India, Norse, Celtic, Sumerian, early, even Babylonian, Christian, there are creation myths that involve great giant lizards and dragons that are the ancestors of humans, the dragons having intercourse with women and producing offspring that are our heroes. There's a huge mythology on this. There's a challenge, however, to it was kind of amusing. On the Amazon website, I've tried to learn, I couldn't get this book, but I tried to learn more about it, and there was a lot of people had very positive reactions, but there were some negative ones. You know, they give stars. Well, this guy didn't like this at all. He gave it 1 star. Other people gave it 4, 3. You know, and he said he was objecting to the attack on Scripture. He said we should accept that he's challenging this. The writers we're supposed to accept that Scripture is a watered-down attempt to explain the mysterious in mythological terms, but that Sumerian texts are exacting and always to be taken and interpreted literally. Has this guy considered that what he takes so literally may also be an effort to explain in mythological terms something that the writers of Sumerian texts couldn't fathom in terms they could understand? Just because an ancient carving depicts a person ensconced in feathers or reptilian attire doesn't literally mean that there were such creatures. Fair enough. So I just wanted to put that in there as a kind of sobering thought. Bud Hopkins correctly, I think, brings up the risk of what he calls stew-pot thinking, which is so you take lots of things, you put them all together as if they're all one thing. Probably it's okay if the stew, you know, is potable or eatable, but there is, I am bringing a lot of things together that may or may not fit, just to show how in the mythic history of the human race, the reptilian figures play a major role, and so when the experiencers have a strong connection with the reptilian past and actually encounter real reptilian beings, it makes this more relevant. And then there, of course, are the serpent gods, Quetzalcoatl and the aboriginal rainbow serpents, and the snake itself is sometimes thought of as representing immortality because it can shed its skin and so forth. One of the experiencers that I've worked with quite closely has gotten very interested in this whole subject, has gone to some of the Christian pagan churches like Rosslyn in Scotland, and where there is there's strong dragon and snake symbolism, and this dragon is often depicted as representing the masculine energy and the snake as the feminine energy is, for example, in in Eastern philosophy, the Kundalini energy, which is like a coiled snake at the base of the spine. Now, in Judeo-Christian, or particularly Christian mythology in Western culture, the serpents don't get a very good rap. The Gnostics, which is kind of the rejected part of Christianity, they talk about the archons, which are reptilian beasts which have reptilian body, heads like a lion, and they're kind of a predatory, dark race. Medusa, snakes that are terrifying. What happens if you look at the snakes and Medusa? You turn to stone or something like that. Really bad rap. I mean, the snake, look what happens. Right in the beginning, the snake is blamed for everything, and sometimes in some mythologies, the snake is a serpent dragon kind of figure, not a nice snake. And there are even some interpretations of the Bible that say Adam was descended from, is part reptilian himself. I will not get into trouble on that one. The devils and the demons in Christianity are often shown as having reptilian and dragon, serpent-like qualities. And then, of course, you know about the sort of heroic attacks that have gone on reptilian beings throughout early Christian mythology. St. Patrick's great achievement of getting all the snakes out of Ireland. St. George is the patron saint of England, who originally from Cappadocia in Turkey, but interesting, I've got to talk to Haktan about that. But he, of course, the battle that he won with the dragon. And then Beowulf, which is a little less well known, but Beowulf is the first Western epic poem. And Beowulf is a great hero, and what does he do? This smelly dragon is threatening the kingdom, and his mother too. And Beowulf goes and he crushes this dragon and destroys it. And then he goes and he destroys the dragon's mother, just to make sure. And then later on, the dragon serpents actually end up destroying the kingdom where he's from. There is a huge contemporary interest in dinosaurs, as you, I'm sure, are all aware. I sometimes, I wonder what is that about? All the movies and the fear of T-Rex. I mean, when I was a child, we were interested in dinosaurs, but not like now, And then you get a figure like Barney, right? I mean, I pity the parents here. I don't know if Barney's still on so much, but this pink little dragon that can't hurt anybody. I mean, what anxieties is that dealing with? The children are so focused on Barney, and of course, Barney is just the opposite of the kind of threatening dragons that you get in Jurassic Park and the likes of that. All right, how do we put all this together? Now, well, I really can't put it all together, but but the experiences are real. They're also mythic. They reflect something deep in our own unconscious, our own instinctual natures. They have a powerful mythic dimension, which does not contradict the fact that they're real. They also, I think, this is a hypothesis, that this tremendous interest now that's happening in the reptilians represents a return of the repressed dimension of ourselves, which does not mean that there aren't real reptilian beings. You see that either-orness that we've gotten into, it can be both. The internal and external, present and past, real, physical, and mythic. and perhaps some meaning for our culture in terms of what we've been hearing in this conference about the need to come to terms with everything about ourselves, including the darkest, most powerful, instinctual, sexual, aggressive forces. And that may have something to do with why this is such a contemporary subject. Now, before concluding, I want to get to the hard science part of this talk. I've just been over this. This is how you can really know that you've been abducted by aliens. This is the hard edge, absolutely multiply witnessed and certain. I have to thank a couple of people on the staff for this. I don't know if they would want to be named. I didn't put this in. He did. All right. Someplace here, I have written down some conclusions, which I don't really need to write down. I want to relate. Might seem like a bit of a stretch, but not to me. I want to relate all of this to what I said I was going to talk about, which is the world crisis of polarization, dualistic mind, and that sort of thing. 9/11, the destruction of the environment, all of this. I think it is relevant. And Carla Elizabeth Ruykert, I don't know what's the right way to pronounce Ruckert. Oh, that's easy. She talked about the war of good and evil that goes on in a number of mythologies. But then she made the point, or the light and dark, that this is a limited kind of war. And that the much greater challenges would be the integration of our own darkness, our own reptilian beings, those elements in ourselves. She made the remark, which just knocked me, hit me hard. In the last days, the dragon will thrash its tail. This integration involves an expansion of who we are as spiritual beings. Now, the UFO phenomenon is about as powerful a way that I know, or a powerful shattering of the linear mind that I know, opening up of consciousness. So you just have to know an experience or to know that this is true of them. It requires, as I've described in several ways, that we live in paradox, not either or, but this and this, real and mythic, personal and collective, inside and outside. The UFO phenomenon connects us beyond ourselves with all beings, terrestrial and extraterrestrial. It opens us to a connection with nature, all of nature. It is the ultimate, along with many other anomalies, but it is the most powerful one I know to transcend the dualism, the polarity of the way we generally have come to think. It's not exclusive to the West. Polarized thinking is part of the human way of thinking, but to transcend that thinking, to experience our connectedness to all beings, to nature, I think this is this enables us to do that if we use it that way. It's a possibility that is there. I'm not saying that's what it is. I don't know what it is, but I think it offers us that possibility. Okay, we have time for 20 minutes of, right? 15, 20, what do we have? Okay, so I'll stop there and let's have questions.
Thank you for wonderful presentation. I agree with you that we, the Islamic peoples, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, Christians, and all have the possibility to become good guys, wonderful guys. There should be no enemy. We all should love each other. As a Christian, I condemn no guy to be evil. But in reality, our world contains an appalling, an enormous amount and variety, both of suffering and of evil. Perhaps
You have a question that you want? I mean,
Yes,
you're saying very interesting things, but I think we're going to have to give people a chance to ask questions. And do you have a question?
yes.
Okay.
Perhaps our no century rivals are ours for the magnitude of either. So I acknowledge that evil is quite real. If I don't deny it, if I deny it, I would be a liar. But in any horrifying case, we should overcome the evil with the good.
Where are you going? What's your question? I know I can't disagree with anything you're saying, but what is the question?
So I'm from South Korea.
Yeah.
What do you think of the relationship between South Korea and North Korea?
Well, I don't know whether that question is supposed to have to do with the President Bush's including North Korea in the evil axis, or axis of evil. I think that declaring the evil to be totally out there, to label a whole country as evil, is exactly what we need to transcend. I think that's not going to get us anywhere. It's going to alienate, in the true sense of alienate, that's the right use of that word, a whole people, pointlessly. Yes, there's evil, but where is the evil? Is it a country? No. It's something that is an aspect of ourselves which may be expressed powerfully by some acts that we, like the 9/11 event, but there's also evil in ourselves when we destroy the wildlife of the Arctic or plunder the other parts of the world for the resources to feed our appetites for power and whatever. Yeah.
In answer to his question, I have found the enemy, and the enemy is us. The fear within, period. We have to deal with our own fear. That's the darkness. My question is this. What happened to your little coalition, and is there a place in the future where a little coalition of that sort can come together again, where we could start crossing over these different disciplines?
What do you mean coalition?
The different scientists and people you put together in your little
well, we're still doing
university.
that. I mean, we have a center called the Center for Psychology and Social Change, and the PEER, the Program for Extraordinary Experience Research, is a program of that center. And we have Pat Carr, my associate, as we have a table with that literature, and be great if you would get to know more about what we're doing, because I think we're trying to reach out and touch a lot of people and of many different disciplines. So I mean, it is going on. If you'd like to join us, that would be terrific.
Yeah, can you rattle off a website number?
Yeah, www.centerchange.org.
First of all, Dr. Mack, thank you so much for coming here, and thanks for standing up for your belief and being an avant-garde and trying to go new places. And I'm going to fire 3 real quick ones at you. First of all, if you had to choose, which is most likely, that we are being studied, farmed, or evolved? And you can only choose one.
All 3.
You can't choose all 3.
And, not or.
No,
I don't know. I think that the evolved would be not from them, would be from what we do with what's before us. You know, it's a very non-interventional God.
I know.
Whatever this God is, this creator, it seems to have a kind of non-interventionist approach to leaves it to us, you know.
I was looking for your gut first, so I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. Next question is, how many species do you think are visiting us?
Let me answer quickly. Again, I don't go there because I don't know. Take this whole tremendous variety of reactions I mentioned to the reptilian experience. Okay, it looks like there are all kinds of different reptilian beings, right? But maybe that's not true at all. Maybe there are all kinds of matches here between the psyches of different individuals and the reptilians. That's a hard thing to get your arms around, but before I start saying there's lots of different kinds of reptilians, there may be lots of different kinds of fits going on here.
Okay,
What's the third one?
Got you real quick. If you take into account the fact that a superior race has many, many different levels of intelligence above us, cloaking devices, travel, species, intergalactic, how do you really justify the encounter if they can create any event they want, the holographic or the quantum or the cellular division or interaction? How do you truly know what experience you had? And if you're able to quantify that, what criteria are you using? And I hope to talk to you later.
All right. Just want to make, again, a comment that I'm so much into this whole participatory co-creation of reality thing that I've actually, and I know a lot of other researchers in this field wouldn't agree with this, but I don't think that when a person reports to you something that suggests they've had an experience and you discover, I don't think that experience is fixed, just kind of like that little thing was under the skin that Roger showed, that because I've seen with the experiences I've worked with over time, not only do the experiences evolve, but their relationship to a past experience that we've already covered will evolve. So, in other words, I don't think we can say the experience is this because it changes.
Right. In other words, the real mystery lies in trying to find out what the true experience really was, it would seem to me.
Or maybe there is no fixity of what it was. That's even scarier, you know, to our point of view. Yeah.
I believe that woman that saw that crop circle didn't know where to put it. I believe she was like admitting she was brainwashed, practically. Anyway, where I wanted to go was where I'm glad to see you raised. I felt for many years that the way our discipline's been set up, especially in humanities and also in science, the way they've been pigeonholed and categorized have been intentionally to keep us in certain little realms. And that what you're doing is extremely important because the first thing we have to do to make real progress is to jump across those kind of boundaries. And unfortunately, the worst perpetrator of these little cubbyholes and boundaries is the institution you work in, because that's where that's the head biggest university in the country, funded by what, the Rockefellers and so on and so forth.
Well, let's not go there, but I agree.
Right.
I mean,
agree. But I meant the cubbyholes.
Because the Rockefellers have funded my work too, so that's
they have.
you know, yeah. I mean, Lawrence Rockefeller has actually funded a lot of very progressive movements in this country. I'm not generalizing about the Rockefeller family. And people have their point of view about that.
Okay.
But again,
this cubbyholing science and the humanities, isn't that like putting them at a dead end because there's a rivalry and a lack of communication?
Well, that's why I think a group like this could be so powerful, because we have the capacity to collaborate, to jump categories.
Right.
By the very fact that we're ventured into this kind of wild, weird area shows we're willing to jump categories, but then we end up getting divided among ourselves. So that.
But didn't these categories get defined? Wasn't Harvard among the leadership in defining these categories way back when in the 1800s?
Nah, I think they've been around they've evolved. I don't want to blame Harvard for everything.
Okay, well,
you know.
Yale and
I mean,
Princeton,
they dealt with me in some ways pretty fairly. I mean, they might, I might have gotten much worse than I did, And I don't think they were trying to get rid of me, by the way. I think they just wanted to distance themselves. They distanced themselves from me, and so that they wouldn't have to be held accountable for what I was saying. Yeah, thanks.
Hi. I thought it was very interesting what you were saying about the scientists having this blockage with the Big Bang Theory, because it actually seems to represent their insistence that matter creates thought rather than the idea that thought creates matter. I wonder if somehow they can be encouraged to focus debate on that issue or that particular point, perhaps. Maybe it would encourage them to sort of expand their frame of reference and then maybe sort of understand how all this works.
We have, there's a beautiful person on our board by the name of Trish Pfeiffer, and she's not a published person, academic or anything, but she's a brilliant person, and she's had a passion most of her life with the notion that consciousness is primary in the universe, and that matter and energy come from consciousness. That consciousness is what preceded the Big Bang, say. And she's got a project she started, which I'm trying to help her with, to write to 30 or so leading thinkers who would be interested in that question, and have them write what they have to say about consciousness being primary, and put all that together as a book. I mean, I think it's a very important area. It's counterintuitive, though. I mean, it took me a long time to get that. No, man, how consciousness? Consciousness is what we think with our brains, right? Without our brains, no consciousness. That's the way I was trained. The idea that there's consciousness. The universe has intelligence and consciousness and creative power that isn't simply a projection of the human brain. It took a long time for me to get there. So, I can't expect everyone to just get that, like you got it.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
On the reptilian image, one thing, couple of things I noticed in dealing with censorship of art and so on. For instance, the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo deliberately had a snake biting the penis of one of the Medici, because the Medici had tried to censor the erotic aspects of his painting and didn't succeed, in effect, to say. And also I noticed in the 19th and early 20th century, the Boston Watch and Ward Society, which was banned in Boston into our vocabulary, had as its symbol someone choking a snake. Could you comment on serpents, for instance, in those contexts, particularly Michelangelo's use of a serpent attacking a penis as a means of dealing with, of his expressing his opinions of one of his would-be censors?
Well, I can't speak for Michelangelo. I don't know.
But I mean, what do you think was going on in his unconscious mind?
But the thing, or I'm resonating with what you're saying, is I think particularly in the Judeo-Christian history, that dimension of ourselves, the snake, serpent, the instinctual part of ourselves, has to a great degree been suppressed, repressed, whether it's by whoever, and that one of the ideas that I'm working with here now is that this is erupting. You cannot repress something that real, that powerful, without it coming back to you in all kinds of different forms. And I think that this whole reptilian phenomenon is a return of it. But it doesn't mean it's just the psyche, and it's, again, not that it is also real in a material sense. Again, that breakdown between the material world and the mythic world, that separation we've made there. I have a concept which I call reified metaphor, which is that something that can be both metaphoric and physically real at the same time. Again, that's not the way I was raised to think. Yeah.
Yeah, this one is about dragons. I've had some very positive interdimensional experiences with dragons, in that what they've said is that they were part of the creation of the earth, and currently, well, they went to sleep for a while, meaning they became inactive, and in this time when the new earth is being created, they're waking up again. And what I've experienced with them is that we can work with them to recreate the earth's the grid lines, the ley lines, and so on. They can work with clearing these very quickly and amazingly if we meld our consciousness with them. And I'm curious to see what you have heard or experienced in this regard.
Well, again, I mean, I think it's useful that I don't know what your culture is, but I suspect it's not only Western, white, male-dominated culture, that you have more connection with the culture in which the serpent energy, the dragon energy, there's a more positive relationship to it, not just the male thing of, suppressing it. And, women, women have this is a secret, have a much more comfortable relationship with the actual serpents. I remember when I used to go with my kids to the serpentarium in Miami, and we'd go down, and the boys were all kind of scared of those snakes, and the girls just loved to wrap them around themselves, and they had, but it's cultural too, in part. It's not just biological. Ken Wells, who is a writer who grew up, and he's written a book about his experiences in the bayous, in Louisiana, which is just teeming with reptiles and crocodiles, and there's somebody called Crocodile Annie that everybody knew, and he would he loved snakes. He said he had talked about a big 7 or 8 foot serpent that he came to terms with. Everybody, a lot of people when he go north were scared about it, but because he lived with them, he had a more positive relationship, and he loved to bring the snakes into the classrooms, and the girls thought it was great. Again, the boys, they're not so comfortable with it. So I think that it's closer to the female, the Kundalini energy, the basic female nurturant energy, and that I think this harsh, male, aggressive that aspect of the dragon energy is a masculine matter. I mean, I'm just sort of beginning to play with this, so but thank you. Yeah.
Hi, I have a couple
You done?
questions.
We done?
We have run out of time.
Oh.
John will be out front, so he can answer a couple
one
more
more?
questions
One more?
privately.
Do we have one more? Oh, okay.
So anyway, thank you very much, John. We're running a little bit over, so we'll start James Gilliland at 10 minutes after 8. John will be out front. We do have some of his books available at the book and tape table, and John will be available to sign them for you. And you can ask a few more questions privately.
Yeah, sometimes these